So the question was, how integral do you believe these images in hip-hop are to black culture, and how much influence do you believe it has on shaping the world's view of black people and black culture?
I think hip-hop definitely plays a part in black culture because it's very popular in black culture, and it provides an unfortunate and a very limited definition of success. So in hip-hop, you definitely see a lot of like designer brands, you definitely see a lot of materialism, and I feel like I said, like that defines success for so much of the black community, and it's unfortunate. It's damaging because there's broader interpretations of success that can be defined more academically, more intellectually than the materialism, which constrains the black community that I most often see. I also, to answer the second question you asked, I definitely think it also limits the way blacks are perceived by people outside of their culture. I mean, stereotypes are obviously very real. They're a very real part of our lives, and I definitely feel that hip hop is always attached to black culture. And I'm not trying to antagonize hip hop, but it does, because I don't think it's the totality of black culture, but it definitely presents materialism and a slang, materialism versus like something more moral, or slang versus more intellectual conversation, fighting versus being in school or something like that. It almost presents the opposite of what mainstream society considers acceptable, and that becomes the stereotype of the black community.
Okay. Do you think that positive images portrayed in hip-hop have a lesser impact than the negative images portrayed?
I'd have to say yes, just because I'm trying to think of positive images in hip-hop. And I don't want to say that there aren't any, but none are coming to my head immediately. Not to say that they're all negative, but I feel like just because it's not negative doesn't mean it's positive either. There's a lot of stuff that's probably like neutral, like hanging out in the front step. You know, it's neutral, but it's not necessarily a positive image. Dancing in the club, like that, it's not a positive image, but it's not a negative image. So,
okay. Do you believe that older African Americans, like parents, mentors, leaders, etc., do you think that they see hip-hop as a bad influence? And do you believe that hip-hop has a significance on what the older generation considers the downfall of black youth?
Well, I think when you talk to the older generation, they have actually a very different understanding of hip-hop. So, well, they consider hip-hop as probably closer to Run DMC. You know, it's not 2 Chainz.
Right.
And I think that they feel much more positively towards Run DMC and the music that they grew up with than they do towards the hip-hop that we experience most often today. And I don't think that they would attribute that early on hip-hop immediately to the shortcomings of modern black youth. Although I do believe that they analyzed it close enough. There's evidence of materialism, strong evidence of materialism in those early artists, just as there is now, and it's just as damaging. In fact, those early artists paved the way for the later artists, started those conversations. So I guess to answer your question, no, I don't think that... what was the question?
Do you believe hip-hop has a significance on what the older generation considers the downfall of black youth?
I don't... has a significance what the older generation considers... I think they would say no, but their answer probably should be yes if they think about it more critically.
Can you elaborate?
So, I think they would say... I'm messing up.
I'm going to edit it. So
okay. I think that the older generation has a different understanding of hip hop, and their understanding of hip hop is something closer to like Run DMC, and that they wouldn't attribute that to the downfall of Black youth, but they would attribute more modern reflections of hip hop, like 2 Chainz or Wiz Khalifa or something. I don't know, to the downfall of Black youth. So I think it depends on which perspective you are viewing it from. Hip hop is kind of a broad category.
What influence does hip hop have on the culture on this campus, primarily in the Black community, but even on the campus as a whole, from what you've seen?
I mean, it definitely defines the party scene, but it doesn't particularly have a place in any other aspect on campus, which in itself kind of suggests the values or perceived values of hip hop community, and when which aren't particularly strikingly intellectual. Like, I do think there is intellectualism there that lies there, but it's not the predominant interpretation of hip hop, and then that image is projected onto the Black community negatively.
Cool. All right, last question, just for fun. Who's your favorite hip hop artist and why, if you have one?
If Beyonce counts, I say Beyonce, because she's great.
How about more like rap than R&B, or that mixture, or whatever?
Does Lauryn Hill count?
Yeah.
Okay, Lauryn Hill.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Why wasn't I